What's up, everyone? Welcome to Bluegrass State of Mind, the show where three college roommates talk life, sports, and all the ridiculous things that happen in an apartment we like to refer to as Room 302. We're bringing you stories, hot takes, and the kind of late night debates that probably should have stayed in the group chat.
So grab your headphones, sit back, and get ready for a wild ride through our past college life, sports, and everything in between. Let's get into it. This is Bluegrass State of Mind.
What's up, guys? This is Bluegrass State of Mind. Well, fellas, this will be our last episode that we talk about the current 24 and 25 Kentucky basketball season, as their season has come to an end, losing in the Sweet 16 to Tennessee Volunteers to a score of 78-65. Mason, start us off. Thoughts on the game?
Well, I think we all kind of felt decently good going into this game. We matched up well. We played them well the first two times, beat them the first two times. I think that they just kind of came out and punched us in the mouth a little bit. And I think they had a great game plan coming in, right? I was looking through some of the stats. The shots that they missed, they got an offensive rebound on half of the shots that they missed. And I think that they really tried to run us off the three-point line. You know, I don't remember how much we got up exactly, but we shot less than they did, and that's not even their game. And I really feel like that them crashing the offensive board so hard and getting those offensive rebounds limited us from getting out in transition and opening up other looks, which has been kind of our go-to all season, playing fast. I really think they just kind of controlled the tempo from the tip, and it was hard for us to fight back and get back in that game. We made a couple runs where, I thought, okay, here we go, get it down to 6, 7. We're still right here in this. I didn't think it was really completely over until, 6 or 7 minutes left when they went on that big run, and kind of pushed it out. There was a little bit of hope just because, we've seen us this year come back from some big deficits in the second half and pull out a win. But I just think they kind of set the tempo from the very beginning. That's the biggest thing for me. We'll get into a bunch of stats here in a minute, but my initial thoughts is they just came out and controlled that tempo and tried to slow the game down and took us right out of our game.
Yeah. So I'm just going to throw out some stats. So obviously stats is deceiving because that doesn't tell the full story of a basketball game. But if you were to look at the stats, let's just compare something real quick. So as a team, we shot 49% from field goals. They shot 50%. From the three-point line, we shot 40%, 6 for 15. They shot 5 for 19 at 26%. And then from free throws, we shot right at 70%, and they shot 75%. They went to the line 7 more times than us and only hit 6 more free throws than us. So if you look at stats, rebounds, we had they was plus 10 on us on that. Turnovers, we had 8. We had 12. They had 8. Like, it wasn't like it was a game that was just one of those stats was just, it just really stood out. Like you said, I think for me, we just did not match the intensity. And I think that that's what it come down to. We never, ever got to the type of game that we wanted to play. I said going into it on their last episode, one of the biggest keys was matching their physicality. We never done that. I think they played hard. I do. I thought our defense looked good early. But there's a difference between playing hard and playing aggressive and playing to coming out with intensity. And I just felt like we was missing that. We never, on the offensive side, I just felt like when watching that game, and if you even go back and you rewatch the first 5 minutes, it was almost as we were just lackadaisical, just taking it smooth. There was no willingness to, this is our last possible game. Like, that's not, it did not have that feel that we did against Illinois, where we came out and we punched them in the mouth. We were the ones who got punched in the mouth, like you said. So that's kind of just the biggest thing for me. Tennessee, they was 19. They had 19 second chance points to our 5. That's a big stat line. Tennessee, they also had 23 bench points to our 6. We just got a butt whooping. I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, and I know you said I was kind of the same way, hoping that we might make a late run, and the way that they beat us down from the first 5 minutes, from the first and second half, there's just no recovery in that if you don't start hitting a bunch of threes, and we just wasn't doing that. That was only the second time that I don't know if y'all realize this. That was only the second time that we was held under 30 points the entire first half of the entire season.
I was
We're
going to
not
say,
that's not a winning recipe for us with the team that we have. So that's just my initial thoughts. Colton, what was some of yours?
Yeah, so just first off, still a really good season. I'm proud of where the program had come to. I give Mark Pope an A for his first season. Sweet 16, you reunited the fan base in a lot of ways. Brought back a lot of passion among the fan base. And so I want to give all those flowers before I kind of go into what I'm going to say, because I was happy with all that happened. But that being said, I'm in agreement with Dylan that I just you hear people talk about give 110%. Mason, me and Dylan was talking about in our message about how we just didn't know where the effort was, and you was like, I think they're playing hard. And what I mean by that is I have no doubt that they're out there playing hard, but where's that extra 10% when you say 110%? Because when he reads off those stats, you don't see a big difference in the game. So where's the big difference come from that? The tip balls, the 50-50 balls, the offensive rebounds, the effort parts of the game. And we just didn't have it. And we saw that a few times, right? We kind of saw it against Troy, and we saw it multiple times this year. And I just do not really quite understand where that comes from, just because you have a group, that Pope has that passion, right? You know that that's not something that he settles for. And you have a bunch of older players who you would think would be the kind of guys that was like, oh, we can't. And that's what I thought we saw against Illinois, right? They didn't have it against Troy. You went into the Illinois game, it was like, we can't have that same effort. And they come in with that effort. You're in the Sweet 16 against probably your biggest rival now, since Louisville had been down the last few years, and a team that you've beat the two times this year, and a guy. They posted the Ziegler flipping off your sign when they played at Rupp for the tournament. You had every reason in the world to come out on just fire with intensity, and you didn't. And I don't know where it was. It's hard to sit there and watch. What's disappointing to me is we've lost tournament games, and they're disappointing and they're hard to take in. But like the way that we lost to Alabama in the SEC tournament, the way that we lost to Tennessee in the NCAA tournament, we don't lose that way, right? Where we did not get within single digits after the 9-minute mark of the first half. Do y'all realize that? Not one time did we get within single digits of that game. I mean, that's just domination. And domination against your rival in the biggest stage of the year, it's hard to watch. There's different aspects that I want to go through, but to me, I'm like you, Dylan. It's just hard to sit there and watch that game and wonder where it was in that time. Like I said, I appreciate the team. I enjoyed watching them. I know how much they loved coming to play for Kentucky. A lot of those fifth-year transfer guys. Pope done a great job with them this first season. Just a hard way. It's just a disappointing way to go out. It wouldn't have been that bad if we'd have lost. It would have hurt, but really we didn't make it competitive at all. And it just was hard to watch Kentucky basketball, look at that and be like, we're not as good as these teams. All right.
One thing I do want to bring up, because you did see a lot of people talk about it, and to me, it's almost it is an excuse. It really is, given the way that I thought that we played. But you've seen a lot of people talk about our shooting performance with it being in Lucas Oil Stadium. But there was other teams that were doing that as well. We were not the only team that had to face that, and that's not the first time that we've played there. And it's also going to be there next year for the Final Four. We played there in the Final Four when we lost to Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think we're just cursed in that building.
Maybe we're cursed in that building. I don't know, but
we didn't get outshot though. Like that's
that's what I'm saying. So I'm not buying that. I think that it's probably a little bit more difficult. I would agree with that, but
Yeah,
saying
It
that that
definitely
was one
is.
of the big factors of why we didn't play our game, I think that's just an excuse. I mean, we just got
Tennessee
whooped.
Tennessee just took us out of our game from the very beginning. That's all they did.
yeah. I mean, we had too many. Like we talk about how the best part about Pope's offense is how much movement there's always is, and how many screens and different back cuts and everything. And it just seemed like Tennessee would take us out of the first initial read, and then what would
Hmm.
happen? We just kind of like dribbled, and then we take a contested three without moving the ball. We didn't like, and that's just not who we are. We don't have those guys that can do that. Like, just hey, let's back away, let this guy go to work. That's not us. But it's
Well,
like that's what we had to settle for.
that's one thing that I said during the game. Like I was watching it, and it's like Tennessee's game plan was run us off the 3 point line, right? That's what we do. That's how we create our offense. And they were overplaying everything, right? We come out of a timeout, Pope draws up a play, and we backdoor, right? We go for that little handoff, backdoor, get an easy layup out of it. And I was like, yes, thank you. Like start backdooring. They got to stop overplaying it. That's going to open everything up. And then we just never went to it again. I don't know. They did a great job of taking us out of our game, and we kind of just let them. We settled for it, right? We let them dictate everything on the offensive end of the floor. And then, another big thing is those offensive rebounds. I mean, like Dylan said, they had, what was it, 19 second chance points? We had 5. That's the difference in the game right there. That's 14
Hmm.
points. That's a whole difference in the ball game. You get a stop. I mean, think about it. You play defense hard for 20 to 25 seconds. You get a great defensive possession, force a tough shot. They miss it. They get a rebound, put it back in. That's deflating over and over and over and over. I mean, that's something that can't continue to happen, and it did all game long. I'm sitting there I'm like, great defensive possession, shot goes up,
Oh,
tough 2, tough 3. They get an offensive rebound and got the ball right back again. And that's like,
And
oh
it
my
and it
goodness.
hadn't been a problem for us lately, but it was earlier in the season, right? That was a
Yeah.
big thing that we talked about, how offensive rebounding was killing us.
Yep.
hmm.
And it just kind of like we reverted back to a few of those earlier games, the games against like Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, the physical teams that did the same thing that Tennessee did to us, and we never get yeah, thumbs up for it. I mean that's exactly what happened though, you know. We reverted back to our old selves, and that's hard to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Something
I
I
would
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Mason.
Well, something I want to bring up that I kind of talked about a little bit today, and it's something that I feel like these players probably knew, but going forward, we just have to get these dogs, right? Because Kentucky is everybody's Super Bowl, right? I mean, look the way Tennessee played against us. I know Houston's a physical team, but they came out today, and it's like we always say. I tell everybody, you can make the most money sports betting after a team beats Kentucky. If you go and bet against them, if you bet for the other team to cover whatever it is, I guarantee you 9 times out of 10 it happens because it's almost like they blow everything they got against us, and then they come out the next game flat. So I think going forward, Pope obviously knows that, right? I mean, he understands what Kentucky's all about. But I think that's a big thing because we see that so often throughout the year, right? It's every game where everybody's Super Bowl. And I think that's
Yeah.
something that we have to just get these guys who understand that. Like you said, Colton, come out every night like it's your last. This one was, and they did.
Yeah, and I just a little bit touch on that what Coden said, and you both running us off the 3 point line. That was something that I felt like they done very well. And that, and even if teams did do that, I thought that we made great adjustments all season long about if the three wasn't working, then we were able to attack within the side the 3 point line. But with this game, it was just they were so physical with our guards and our bigs that everything that we had, if you watch, a lot of our sets were just past the 3 point line. Whereas we usually when we're getting those back doors and we're getting those runoffs, it's more so right at the 3 point line inside of it to where we're going downhill towards the basket. And everything that we was doing was being pushed outside the 3 point line. And I hats off to them. I mean, they played a really good game. And as much as I hate Tennessee, I mean, they just outplayed
They
us.
made adjustments from the first two games,
Yeah.
and it seemed like we came in with the exact same game plan that we done to win the first two games, and it didn't work. And
Yeah.
that's a little concerning too. But
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't our best.
Is there anything more about the recap that you all want to talk about?
No,
I don't either.
I mean that's a
I'm
good
ready.
point, Dylan, about them pushing us out. It reminds me, we talked a little bit about, but like the Clemson game, our offense struggled that game because they were pushing us out so far outside of the 3 point line, starting our offense. And I'm sure Tennessee went back and watched the games we lost. And Clemson's a physical team, Tennessee's a
Yeah.
physical team, and they were like, if we can do this, we can limit their offense, and that's exactly what they did to us.
Yeah. Well, let's just. I mean, all what we're going to be talking about a lot tonight, guys, is just everything Kentucky basketball, but it all could be jumbled up into one bow. But we're just going to go to our next one. Um, Try to stay away. I mean, you all know this from like your Pope stuff because we'll get into that after this. But so, where do we go from here? Because the season is over, but the season is already began, as we talked about in our previous episode. Last Monday, the portal opened. So how do we improve? That's what we're going to talk about now. How do we improve? What do we got to do for next season looking forward to our 2025-2026 Kentucky basketball season? Colton, what are some things that your biggest things that you think that we have got to do in order to improve for this team next season?
Uh, yeah. So the first thing you got to go get your 6'7" to 6'9", 3-4 guys, and they need to be able to have a variety of skills, the driving of the basketball, the physicality, right? Like this team needed the Aduthieros, like the team, like because when you're not hitting, right? We just ran out of that. Owe was kind of that guy, but he's still just like 6'4", 6'5". Right? We didn't have that, and then you immediately go from like him to Carr or Williams. You didn't have that guy that could really be that 6'8" to 6'9" guy that could guard the point guard if he needed to, that could guard the center if he needed to. And I think we've got to get those type of guys in here. I'm not sure. I don't think we've got them in the recruiting class that we're coming in. I know we signed the first guy of the transfer portal from Tulane. It looks like he's 6'8", shooter. Freshman is what I'm excited about because once I first saw his numbers, I was like, okay, well, if he was a senior, I wouldn't have been as impressed. But as a freshman, 9 point, like 8 points a game, 40% from the three, like 50% field goal rate. Um, I don't know how physical he is. I watched some stuff, and that's kind of the knock on him is that he's not necessarily a very physical guy. But those type of players you're going to have to get in here. I think we'll always kind of have a point guard, right? Point guards come to love. They come to play at UK, regardless who's there. And we've got some eyes on some people. So I think as long as you can get somewhat of a veteran point guard, I think that Lewis Forrest is coming in freshman. I think he needs to be the backup. But he don't need to probably be a starter. So you need to get a veteran starter in here for that. I mean, I think Pope will always go after shooters. So continue doing that. But your identity has to be able to, we've got to be able to win multiple ways. You have to be able to win that type of game that like Tennessee forced you into. And when we're not hitting, when we only hit 5 threes a game, can we still win a game? And so I would like to see us get those 6'6" to 6'9" guys that can maybe shoot, step out, and hit the three, can guard multiple positions, and can also be the guy that's like, all right, take your guy to go because you've got a mismatch. Your guy's guarding you 6'5" and you're 6'8". Those type of guys, and we'll see what he can do in the portal.
Yeah. Well, you took one of mine. I had three things. So I'm not going to touch on that one. And Mason, you can go after. But my first one is we have got to find a dude. We've got to find a guy who can score at all three levels. And we have Jasper Johnson coming in, but I don't know if that's going to be that guy. And I don't know. Well, we've got to find a Fears or a Walter Clayton. And I know that those are rare. I understand that, but and it can be a small guard like that. It could be a 6'4", 6'5" guy. Always not that guy. Always he made some great last second shots for us this year. He had some great games, but he is only a two-way scorer. He's just physical, but he cannot create his own shot because he don't have a shot. Like we have to go find somebody who can take over a game when it's needed because right now it's a prime example. Florida, you had Walter Clayton. I know that he wasn't the guy up until the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game. But then whenever they needed that guy, they had
Took it
that guy.
over.
I mean, he just took, yeah. And I'm not saying that that's going to win you every game, but we have got to find somebody because it's been a while since we did. And you know, you look at our most successful teams, we had some of those guys, which brings me to my next point. We've got to find some athletes. We do. I mean, I love I love shooters. I was a shooter. I'm not taking anything away, but this team was full of shooters. But shooters are only going to take you so far in any game, not just March. At the end of the day, if you are not shooting, it's like Coach said, you got to find and have other ways to win basketball games. And sometimes that's something that Cal was so good at. We had athletes who could go make plays. And you know, that I think that that's something that we have got to do because I felt like this team had a lot of good players. We did. And we had a lot of very fundamental players. We had a bunch of role players who could play their part. They had a great team chemistry. But at the end of the day, when you look at the teams that we lost to, we were out. They just had athletes. And I'm not saying that that's going necessarily, you don't have to have them all across the board, but you got to have 2 or 3, especially off the bench. That's a big thing. We got to have some guys that come off the bench that doesn't get blown by on the defensive end or can just go make a play. When I look at Florida, you know, the guys they bring off the bench, like the no names almost, like it's like, who's this guy? And he's making his own. He's creating his own. He's about a 6'4", 6'5" guard. I think that that's my 2 biggest things other than the big man is we got to find a guy who can score at all 3 levels, and we've got to fill in along with our shooters. We got to have some athletes. Mason.
I mean, that was my biggest thing is athletes. How many times this year did we watch a game and just say we were just outmatched physically or athletically at almost every single position, right? And yeah, we would still find some ways to win those games because of our shooting and the way that we played. But just think about how much better we would be if we had those athletes, right? Like we were talking about earlier today, you know, one of the point guards we're looking at in the portal, that kid from Georgia, right? And I think that's somebody that we need. I I watched about an 8-minute clip on somebody breaking down last night, you know, his game, and he has some weaknesses, obviously, but I mean, he's athletic. He can get by his guy. He's shifty. He plays hard on the defensive end. The defensive clips that he showed me, he was fighting over ball screens, stay in front of people. We need somebody like that that can still dictate the tempo on the defensive end, right? But can also go get us a bucket. And I think that's the biggest thing that we missed this year, like you said, Dylan, is whenever we needed a bucket. And I feel like Jackson Robinson kind of became that guy for a little bit there. He was starting to get hot, kind of finding his shot, and being able to create for himself. He had a couple games like that where he had big games creating his own shot, and then he got hurt. But we have to have a go-to guy when it comes down the stretch and we need a bucket. And then the other thing, I know he created this roster very quickly, but I feel like we fell off dramatically, right, on the bench compared to some other teams that are making these deep runs, right? You got Brandon Garrison, which I think Brandon Garrison's a fine player. Ansley Almanor, he can shoot the ball. And then after that, we really started to fall off. You know, I think those 2 are okay as maybe like your 8 or 9 guy, right? Bring them in, give some energy, knock down a 3. But coming in and playing 15-plus minutes a game, we got to have better athletes. We got to have guys who can score more than just one way. And I felt like both of those guys were very one-dimensional. Felt like Ansley Almanor, he just stood around the three-point line. And not taking anything away from these guys at all. I mean, I loved having them on the team. They gave us some great moments. But we just got to find guys who are more than just shooters. Or, you know, Brandon Garrison, I feel like he was mostly just an energy guy for us this year, which I think he could be great coming off the bench next year. But we got to have that 6, 7, and 8 guy where we don't really fall off, right? And that I know part of it was due to injuries this year, but that was the biggest thing for me this year, watching our team compared to like a Florida, like you said, or like an Alabama. You know, they had Fallon coming off the bench or Holloway, and you know they had all these guys coming off the bench where they didn't really fall off. They just kind of kept playing at the same level, and we didn't have that. And that's something that he needs to fix, and hoping that he has a little bit more extended time in the portal this year, he can take care of those things.
Yeah. Well, then let's go ahead and just talk about some of Pope's takeaways, because I think this is all going to just mash together. So, Mark Pope comes in first year from BYU, hadn't won in March or in the NCAA tournament, but he goes 24-12 here at Kentucky, makes a Sweet 16. He won a game in the Champions Classic for the first time. We hadn't won a game since 2019 in that. We had a couple of signature wins over some of our biggest rivals. I mean, I would say all three of our biggest rivals, Duke, Tennessee, and Louisville. We had 8 top 15 wins, and that set a program record, but also it tied an all-time single season record. Um, I think Pope, I think he gets it. I do. I think he gets the culture because he was a part of the culture. He was a captain, won a national championship as a player. He understands the love that BBN has for Kentucky. He knows how passionate we are, and I just, I think he gets it. I do. However, you just can't get it. You also have to start producing results. I think going into next season, Pope's seat is not as hot as it would have been had we not beat Illinois. That gave him a little bit of peace maybe going into next season. But we will have some angry fans, which we should. I mean, that's just college basketball. So you got to win at Kentucky. But what are some of Pope's biggest takeaways? Not stats wise, because that's his achievements. But what are some things that you would like to see him improve on? What do we have to do as a coaching staff? Colton, kind of go off that.
Yeah, so like you said, you listed all those things, and I said it earlier before we started. I give an A to Pope for his first season, absolutely, with everything he had to come into, the pressure wise, the limited time, and Sweet 16 run. You know, that we talked about it all season. What was the ceiling of this team? Which is not a great conversation to have, but I feel like they pretty much met their ceiling, right? I think the bracket draw got us a little bit more excited than what we probably should have been, right? I think we were like, oh, our first two matchups are pretty good. We beat Tennessee twice, and then you never know what else happens. So I think all of a sudden we went from really this is their ceiling. We saw the bracket. We were like, oh, this could be our ceiling. Reality set in that really we met our ceiling. We said it all year long. We had a few teams that even when we played Duke, right? I think we all agreed that we played Duke 10 times. We weren't beating them more than like they were going to beat us the majority of the 10 times. And there was multiple teams like that this season. And so to me, my biggest takeaway is what I do enjoy is that he does run a more modern offense. There's a lot of movement. He gets a lot of shooting involved, a lot of back cuts, a lot of screens, different things like that. So he's very analytical. So he can break down a lot of numbers, which is good in a lot of ways. All that stuff. He's a player's coach. I think they're going to love playing for him. They know that's his passion. I think he's a very positive guy, which is very good in a lot of ways too. The things that I think he has to work on: one, subbing. He's going to have to realize, like I think he has this confidence in a lot of other players than maybe he shouldn't have probably had. And I don't know if that just comes from being like a very positive and player type guy, like, oh man, I believe in this guy, and then send him out there and things don't work out. So I think he's got to go away from, oh, this kid's going. I know he didn't end up playing him. I didn't figure it would, but like the statement he made about Travis Perry coming off his wrist injury, saying how big of a role he was going to play this coming weekend. He didn't end up playing in the game against Tennessee, which he didn't need to. But I hope that doesn't like translate into like playing guys that don't need to be playing. So that's one thing he needs to work on. Two, I don't want him to stray away. Like I love, like he's a culture guy and he gets it for Big Blue Nation. But that doesn't mean that I want him to stray away from really going after these top 5 guys, right? Don't like just because people were mad about like Cal bringing in one and dones. That doesn't mean that we need to go away from one and dones. Like we need those studs. Like we would have took a Trey Johnson from Texas, freaking Cooper Flag. Like, don't stray away from those guys because you might see a guy in a portal that's a 50 or senior you like a little more.
Mhm.
And so I hope he's aggressive in the recruiting trail because we have missed on a few so far. I mean, that's the reality. I'm not saying we won't bring in some guys, but we've missed on some. And I hope it's not because he's looking at it as like maybe they don't fit our culture, they don't fit our stuff. Like, if they're good, go after them. And finally, my biggest thing, I just want him to go, like, he needs a mix and match of his style of offense and, say, like a Cal style of offense, where he needs to be more analytical in the movement of the ball, but he also needs to bring in guys that he realizes, all right, we're going to have a street ball type game. All right, we don't have, like, we can't just rely on their movement and stuff like the Tennessee game. All right, guys, we take the Arkansas St. John's game, right? Arkansas or St. John's would have went into that Tennessee game the other night and been a lot more competitive than what we were. And that's just because they could play that type of style. And so I want him to not just stick to these one ways. And I think he should have learned a lot. And he's a smart guy. I hope he takes that. But look, we made it Sweet 16. That's a really good achievement. But what that does to him next year is you can't go like Sweet 16, lose first round. You can't go. So now he's got to go forward, right?
Mhm.
You got to go better. And
Yeah.
and so we'll have to see how it goes.
Mason, before I want to send it over to you, I do want to say something as well. Because I was just reading off stats, but not really my thoughts. It just bothers me because, like I said, I sent a message to you all either yesterday, today, I don't even remember. But this is Kentucky. I mean, it's been 10 years since we made a Final Four. It makes me so mad just seeing Duke. I cannot stand Duke, but they they're just achieving like they're doing it. I mean, for the past 5 years. I mean, whether they're not winning it all, but they're putting themselves into winning it all. It seems like about every other year now. When you look at, and I think that that's a big challenge that Mark Pope, and it goes hand in hand with what you said, Colton. You take that Trayson Eagle staff, the North Dakota State guy. 5 years ago, if you would have asked me if he's choosing South Carolina over Kentucky, Kansas, and what was the other, UConn, or no, Gonzaga, like what are we doing? And I think that's a challenge that he has got to figure out. And this is Kentucky basketball. There is no reason we should not. And it's not because it's not because of Mark Pope. It's just the NIL that we have now that plays into a factor. But at the end of the day, we're still Kentucky basketball. He's got to find a way to find those top recruits and mix and match, like you said, Colton. But it just, I think that's a really big challenge that he's got to answer, because I agree 100% with you, Colton, that he hits me as the type that wants to go find the right guy who looks the right, but at the end of the day, probably isn't the one that we really need, and that will make a lot of stupid and silly mistakes. But having that guy is also going to give you more than what others would. And I think that that's the biggest challenge moving forward is Mark Pope has got to find a way to make those Cooper Flags come to Kentucky, the Karl Anthony Towns like we did have. And that's not a shot at him. That was, and I've said that Cal was so good at that. Like that was like, I mean, I don't, he just got those dudes. And that's what he has got to do, because if we're going to continue to be at this level, we and Mark Pope, I mean, in 3 years, if he ain't getting those guys, it's time. Go on. We, we if we're not going to be able to compete and get to Elite Eights and Final Fours, I mean, guys, it's been 10 years. I mean, that's a long time. I mean, that I can't stress that enough. I'm tired of not making a Final Four. I mean, I won a championship, but I mean, we've got to get to a Final Four. I mean, it's been since 2015. So that's my thoughts on that. And the only other thing that I think that Pope has got to be better at is when something is working, don't go away from it. I think, and I use this as a perfect example. If you all watched the Texas Tech game against Florida, I know Texas Tech lost, But that big guy, Darian Williams, he scored like 4 or 5 straight possessions. It's not rocket science. When something is working, don't try to overcomplicate it and throw something in there to like, okay, now let's get this look. Now let's get no, don't do that. Just keep going to what's working because Darian Williams scored it on 2 or 3 possessions in a row. And then whenever they kept going to him, then defenses collapsed and then he got other guys open. That's not a play. That's a coach saying, hey, go make a play. We're not going to call anything, but you're going to get the ball in your hands. Sometimes I think Pope would want to run a set that was kind of, we didn't need it. Mason, what does Pope got to do? Or what do you look forward to?
So I agree, Colton. I think he had a great season, all things considered, right? I gave him, an A, like you said, short, limited time to build a roster, injuries throughout the year, coming in with all this pressure first year, not really having any recruits. You're recruiting completely different people at BYU. With that being said, I think that kind of leads me into I think Pope is a very smart guy. He understands the game of basketball. He understands how the game has changed. And I think I hope he realizes, I think this roster here, right, that he built this year, and again, I know it was a limited time, but it kind of reminded me of that BYU roster that we watched play against Bama, right? Didn't have the athletes, didn't have the physicality. You see them match up with an SEC team like Bama, and it was hard for them, right? They played well, and they still lost. I know Bama went crazy, right? But I mean, that's the kind of thing that I feel like him coming from BYU to Kentucky and being in SEC this year, he's realized, okay, this is a different league, right? Different athletes, different physicality. I got to go out and get these type of guys to be able to do what I need to do at Kentucky, and I hope he realizes that because it really did watching that BYU team, probably the first or second time I've watched them all season. But that was a Pope built team for the most part, right? And they played pretty much the same style. They like to get out and go, shoot a lot of threes. So that's my first thing. I really hope that he realizes that coming from BYU to Kentucky, it's a different league. And I'm sure he knew that, but that's the biggest thing. We've already talked about the athletes. So that's my biggest thing there. Another thing that I want to talk about that I really like to see from Pope this year is all season long, what was our biggest complaint? Defensively, right? Towards the end of the season, I don't remember when it was from, but I think it was towards the end of February. We were the 9th highest ranked defensive efficiency team in the country, right? Which is impressive considering we were not great defensively all season. So I think he has a great basketball mind and has the ability to adapt and look at things and see what we need to do to get better. So that gives me some hope that going forward he can realize and look back on this season and say, here's where we struggled this year. Here's what I got to go out and find. Now it's just on him to execute that in the portal and with recruits going forward. I've said it all season this year. He's behind on last year's recruits, obviously. He was behind on this year's recruits. He wasn't recruiting those same guys at BYU. And it's probably going to take him 2 or 3 years to get in with some of these recruits because they start recruiting so early now. So I agree. I think we give him, depending on his success, but I mean, it's 2 to 3 years max to get to a Final Four, right? And if he's not getting some of these guys in, I know it's tough. Like I said, he's getting behind. But those are the 2 biggest things for me going forward that I hope he sees that I've kind of seen this season that I hope he can adapt to and start getting some of those guys, right? Like you said, Dylan, and a lot of that's changed with NIL. Like you said, that Eagle staff, it's a different landscape now, so I don't know how much money we have in the pot for NIL, but we may have to pony up some more with the way some of these schools are coming in. I mean, Donovan Dent, what was he asking? $3 million? $3 million for one player. I don't know if that's part of what pushed him to UCLA. There's no way that he could have seen UCLA's offense and UCLA's program and been like, I know he's kind of from that area apparently, but like still, you look at the season we had this year, the offense we ran this year as a point guard. I want to go play in that system. That looks fun, right? So a lot of that I think has to do with NIL, and that's something that we've talked about. The whole college landscape has changed, and I think Pope realizes that. I just hope that he can come out and execute that and still land some of these big time guys. But those are probably my 2 biggest things going into next season. I agree, Dylan. I mean, and with you too, Colton. He set the bar at Sweet 16. Anything less than that next year is a disappointment. and I think he knows that. But he's got to go out and get the guys who can get us there.
Yeah, and hearing you say that, but my rebuttal, and I'm not trying to, because I think we're all on the same page. This might not be an episode where we're like arguing, because I think we're all in the same headspace. It's just like, but hearing, but hearing that, like, it does take 2 years to build those and I totally get that. But this is Kentucky. I mean, like, like, what are we talking about? Like, why in the world should we even have to build a relationship? The name across the chest should say enough, and that's just the times we're living in. And as much, and I understand that a coach does have a lot to play, more so probably now than it ever has. But it's also the NIL coming in. But I'm just sitting here looking at the top 10 players for next year. Got coming in. You got
Yes, sir.
BYU number one. Peterson, Kansas, Boozer, Duke, Nate Ament, undecided, Darius Acuff, Arkansas, Chris Kennis, Houston, Caleb Wilson, North Carolina, Michael Brown, Louisville, Koa Pate, Arizona, Malik Thomas, Arizona or Arkansas. Then another. We don't come into play until 17th, and we got Jasper Johnson. Like 5 years ago, you were saying 3 that were in the top 15 that we had. And I know that it's a different landscape. I get that. But at the
Right.
same time, I mean, like I said, I'm going to keep saying it. This is Kentucky basketball. What are we talking about?
Right. And the biggest thing for me with that is that, like I said, Pope done a great job with this team to get to the Sweet 16 and the wins that we picked up. But I think what's hard from us watching it is that, right, Cal's first year went to the Elite Eight. And when we lost that game, none of us sat there and thought that West Virginia was better than us. Right? John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, right? And you can look at it either way. You'd be like, oh, yeah, we underachieved in that game. But at the same time, there was a part of me that was like, that team was good enough. And I don't know which feeling is worse, knowing that we had a team that was good enough that should have won the national championship, or watching that Tennessee game knowing that we didn't have a good enough team, right? Which one, what feeling do you have? Would you rather have a team entering the tournament that you absolutely have no doubt about can win a national championship at their best? Or do you want a team that you just hope that make a Cinderella run with? And that's what this team was, and I think that's what we want to see going forward. Is that at our best, are we the best team in the country? Because
I would say no,
several
we was not. I
no,
mean,
no, we
and
weren't. Even with everyone healthy, we knew that. Like I said,
yeah,
right, we might have been a top 8, top 12 team, maybe at our healthiest and at our best, we might have been atop that. But how many times in the last 15 years, when we were at our best, did we not sit there and say, I mean, think about it. Did y'all actually put Kentucky winning your bracket any this year?
no, I did not.
I couldn't remember the last time that Kentucky made a tournament that I didn't have them win in the bracket, even in the 8 seed year, right? The 4 seed year with Brandon Knight. Because all those teams, when we watched them at one point in the season, we were like, they can win it. They are good enough players to win it. And I just never felt that about this team. I think Pope did a great job to get what he did out of this team. But now you have to now you got to put players and you got to build a team together that when they're at their best, they are the best team in the country.
Yeah,
And
well,
that's what
Let's
you got to
just
see.
bring Cal back to be a recruiter and like our
Right. I
GM.
mean, I really thought that was what was going to happen with UK. I was really hoping that instead of like leaving or coaching again, Cal would retire and just become the general manager for Kentucky until he was just done with basketball in general. Or that's what I thought the plan was when he finally did retire from Kentucky basketball, like the head coaching position, that he would turn around and be like the general manager to help with the recruiting and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm all for that idea, but you need the
Me too.
combination.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, and you talk about being at our best. We are like, and you look at the Final Four, which is what we're going to talk about next. Those 4 teams, I truly believe we have the best 4 teams in college basketball in the Final Four. I do. In
yep.
Auburn, Duke, Houston, and Florida. And at their best, they all 4 feel like they can win it. And I can't sit here and make an argument. I mean, as good as Duke looks right now, I'm not going to sit here and say that. I know Florida has had a couple of games where they've had to like make miracle, but they're still there because of how good they are. Houston looked like a championship team today. Auburn looked like a champ. Like Kentucky is not on that level, and that's sad to say.
We
And I
beat
know
two
that
of
some
those
people,
teams.
I know, and I'm not saying you,
Right.
Mason, but a lot of people say that exactly like,
I know.
oh, we beat all these high quality teams. We did. We found a way. But at the end of the day, when it comes time for tournament time, are you confident enough in that Kentucky team against that Duke or that Florida? And that's a no for me.
We didn't have the athletes. We
Yeah,
didn't have that dude.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
well, like I said, we have our Final Fours or our Final Four, no fours. Mason, what are some of your predictions for the Final Four games?
I think, uh, as much as it pains me to say this, I think Duke ends up winning it all. I mean, I think they just have everything across the board. They got guys that can shoot it. They got guys that can defend. They got guys that can take over the game. They got bigs that are athletic, can block shots, can rebound. I just think they have it all across the board. So I think they beat Houston. I don't know, has the spread come out yet?
No,
For
I've not
them,
looked.
if I had to guess, I'm gonna say Duke is probably like a 4.5, 5.5, probably favored over
I think Duke wins that
Houston.
by
I would say,
7 to 10 is my guess.
yeah,
I mean, just watching these games in the tournament, Duke just seems up here compared to everybody else right now. I mean, they've pretty much dominated every game they played. I
yeah.
mean, I know Arizona, they only ended up winning by what, 7 or something, but I mean, they had it up to 16 at one point. That
Uh-huh.
I feel like they haven't had any second of this tournament where they've been nervous or felt like, ooh, we
It's
might
kind of
lose
like a lot
this.
like UConn last year, right? I mean,
Uh-huh.
they never played a competitive game. UConn didn't the whole time. But they had every aspect,
Yep.
and they had the center, they had the guard play, the NBA players, the go get it guys, and that I mean, they were solid across the board. And Duke's defense is so underrated. I mean, their defense is
They're
good.
really good. Yeah.
So I mean, I
Well, Colton, are you saying so? Do you agree that Duke is
yeah,
about that
absolutely.
looks good?
I think Duke is gonna have it across the board, and it's just because Cooper Flag is a extra. I mean, he's a guy that's going to go get it and guard multiple positions. He's a good defender, like he's a good defensive player. But he can score in multiple ways. And to me, they just like I think they're going to beat Houston because I think Houston could probably rattle them early with some of their intensity, but I don't think Houston can score enough. Where Duke still has the
Uh-huh.
ability to score with their good defense. I think Houston has to have them low scoring games, and I think Duke's at least getting to 70 to 75 points, and that would be enough to beat Houston.
Well,
But I like Duke.
of Houston, Auburn, and Florida, who do you all think could give Duke the biggest run as far as matchup problems, possibly looking at and say, okay, even though Duke might have an edge here, I could see this team causing a lot of issues. And why do you all say that? For me, I'm going to say Florida. I think Florida, and the reason why I say Florida is not because of their guards, but because of those three bigs
Yep.
that are so good. And I text this in the group chat. That was the first time when they played Texas Tech that I did see Florida's bigs get out, where they was more physical and they were just doing what they wanted. But with that being said, I still think that they have the greatest opportunity because also of their bench. I think Duke's bench matches up very well against Florida's bench. There's not a big difference as far as whenever we bring these guys in, there's a tremendous difference because I think Florida, whenever they bring their bench guys in, it's still high quality athletes, shooters, can go get at yours. I think a Florida Duke matchup would be an electric championship game. I do, and Duke might run away with it. Florida might run away with it, but I just think that they match up so well all the way from their starting five to their bench. But I do. I think Florida. What are y'all's thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think Florida's the best chance to beat Duke. Obviously, I don't think any of us want Duke to win, so I feel like we're probably all pulling for Florida. Right. But like you said, Dylan, Florida's really good. I just think Duke's on a different level right now. I do think Florida can get hot and beat Duke. You know, we've seen them get hot a lot this year. Their offense is one of the top offenses in the country with the way they play. They got a guy who could take over the game. And like you said, they got guys that come off the bench that they don't lose much. They're still athletes. They can still come in and go get a bucket. They're big, they're physical, right? And I do think that the bigs could give Duke problems. We saw them, what was it, yesterday, right? We saw all their bigs kind of getting some foul trouble yesterday, right? I think both their bigs were 4 or 5 fouls, 3 or 4 fouls apiece. So if that comes into play, then you have, Cooper Flagg trying to go down there and guard some of those bigs. I feel like that's probably their next best option. Yeah, I think that's their biggest threat is those bigs. The mismatch that those bigs can create for Florida against Duke, and if they get hot, I could definitely see them beating them. But I'm still rolling with Duke right now.
Yeah, I'm going with Florida also. I think the only thing that worries me about Florida that I think Duke has the advantage in is how much scoring Duke or Florida can get from that like 2-3, 3-4 position. Like Clayton Jr. gets his, and then obviously the bigs, Condon and the rest of them all kind of get theirs. But sometimes they have Richard and they have a few guys, but sometimes they kind of go silent. Where Duke has that Knipple and Proctor and then Flag, right? And then you don't even talk about the 7 foot Malik or Malika, whatever his name is. It's what 7'2", that he's going to be a top 15 pick probably in the draft. So I mean, they've got three guys before you even get to their center, who's probably going to be probably one of the top, if not the top center taken in the actual draft this year.
And all three of those guys are freshmen.
And all three of those guys are freshmen. You look at Michigan State, right? Obviously, Auburn threw out 5 seniors, but Michigan State did a lot of theirs with 2 freshman guards this year. They have 2 freshman guards that Richardson and there was another one there. I couldn't think of his name, but so Michigan State made a deep run with a few freshmen. And I think that's got to be the combination going forward, right? Obviously, we don't need this 7, 8 freshmen like Cal used to bring in. And I think Cal admitted that the other day on Pat McAfee's show, right? He's like, in this world, you can no longer do that, right? It's a 3 freshmen, maybe 4 max, and then go get transfer portal. Same way, we're only bringing in 3 guys right now. Nate Ament hasn't decided. I think the unanimous feeling is that he's probably not coming to Kentucky, based on what you're reading. So really, you're stuck with you're with these 3 freshmen. And I don't know. I'm like you, Mason. There's a lot to be seen with them. Jasper Johnson seems to me like the only guy that could come in and make an immediate, really impact. The other ones I think will just be kind of role players next year. But going forward, I'd like to have 3 freshmen that can all come in and make an immediate impact.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on our Final Four stuff? Man, it just hurts saying Duke.
Yeah.
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 All right, well, let's get into our last segment for the night. So, the Texas Children's Houston Open just finished today. We had Minwoo Lee, let him cook. Chef Minwoo, with a score of 20 under, has pulled through for the first time, winning his first PGA Tour victory. But I don't know that he's our biggest story or the biggest story right now. The reason why is because when you have the number one in the world, Scotty Scheffler, at the top of the leaderboard, seems like that's always whoever's the number one in the world. But right now, Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy. If you see them at the top of the leaderboards, their names are going to be mentioned. And personally, I think both are looking really good headed into the Masters, which is 2 weeks away. So let's kind of talk just a little bit about Scotty, how he looked today. You can even mention maybe Rory if you want, but Scotty looked really good. And then we're going to talk about if we could have a foursomes with anybody, who would we play with? Colton, what about Scotty?
Yeah, so number one, shout out to Minwoo. He was their pick this week in their pick'em league. We chose Minwoo. Obviously came out with a win, so that's awesome. His ball speed and his swing, like he produces so much power behind. I mean, he is sporadic, but it was a good course for him to be able to do what he done. Glad to see him get a first PGA win. He had won out the World Tour, but obviously Scotty had a great day today, and he had a great day on Friday.
Friday. Shot his
But
course record,
yesterday,
tied a course record, 8 under.
right, and yesterday was really the talk of the story because it's what he's had all year long with that one
That one
round
round.
that we keep talking about, where he just all of a sudden shoots an even or 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, something where he every other day he's going kind of crazy, and then he's having one round that just puts him almost too far behind or just enough out of it, and then he comes back and he's having a top 15, top 10. Obviously, got second in this one. So
That's 2 years
obviously
in a
he's
row he's
trending
tied 2.
right. Right, he's trending in the right direction. But what works, like what worries me a little bit about that is we saw Scotty do that for so long before he picked up. Oh boy, we could have lost Mason there, but all right, he's back. But yeah, we saw Scotty do that for a year or two before he finally got that first win. Right, we watched him continuously be up there but not win, and I hope that that's not going to that way right now.
Mm-hmm.
I am more impressed with Rory though. I'll be honest with you. What did he finish? Tied for fourth, I think.
No, he tied for 5th. Shot
Tied for
6 under
fifth.
today.
So he's had 2 wins, and like every other one's been top 20. So I think he's found a form to where like we're not seeing like this random like, oh, he's either winning or he's missing the cut. Like Rory's, I think he's found a swing and an ability now to like even when he doesn't have his stuff, he's going to finish like top 15.
Yeah.
Kind of like Scotty has been the last couple of years. So it's exciting seeing both of them play well before the Masters. I wouldn't be surprised. Scotty, obviously defending champion, if that's where he finally comes together at and gets another win. So
Yeah. Mason, are you with us?
Can y'all hear me?
Okay, we'll just proceed on. I'm right there with you, Colton. I mean, I think Scotty, you've talked about it all year, and you've hit it right on the. I mean, perfectly. That there's always that one round. Like what in the world? Because you take Friday 8 under, today 7 under, and then you have yesterday. What did he shoot yesterday? Did he shoot like 1 or 2 under?
it's like 2 under or three
Yeah,
under, something like that. 2 under
and,
maybe.
and not that that's, I mean, bad by no means, but that's not. I mean, that's not going to win on tour right now with the level of competition that there is, especially with Min Woo, the way that he was playing this week. But I think it's very intriguing and interesting that you see both World 1 and 2 trending and playing very well headed into the Masters. This is both, I think, their last tournament. They're not playing next week, I don't think, are they?
No, I don't think either one are. Not. I don't think Scotty is. I know Rory's not. But I mean Scotty is a Texas guy, so I'm not positive, but I don't think he is.
Yeah. Well, Mason has went somewhere. Some may have just had a little technical difficulty, but let's just move on then. So, Colton, well, if you could play with any well, including yourself, you being the fourth, who would be the other 3 guys that you would play with?
Yeah, so number one is Tiger Woods. I mean, obviously, favorite player of all time. The biggest reason anything really new about golf growing up. Um, Still, I mean, even though I know the reality of it is that he probably will never win again, not even really get close. If he's on TV, like it's hard for me to not try to watch every
Mhm.
shot if I can. So he's number one by far. Then I'm going to Ricky Fowler. I'm been a big Ricky fan. You hear about how the fans love Ricky, but mainly because of how good of a guy he is. I mean, he's a fan favorite because he truly is like that good of a guy. And when Ricky's playing well, like it makes the tour fun. Also,
Mhm.
like he's another name that the fans love so much. So when he's playing well, but I think he'd just be really, really fun to play with. Just a really cool guy. And then finally, I would personally like to play with like Rory McIlroy, and I would like to watch his driver. Mainly, I would like to just be in a group and watch Rory's driver swing. I mean, it's to me, he is the best driver swing in the history of the game. And I mean, I've never got to actually be. I can't remember. I went to a PGA Championship back when back when I was a senior in high school when he was in Louisville, and I don't believe we got to actually follow Rory and see some of his swings or see him on the range like we did some others. But I mean, I would just love to be in the group knowing that it would take me a driver and probably a full iron to get to where his drive was.
Yeah.
But I think that group would be awesome. You'd have a couple of Hall of Famers, so the best to ever play, and Ricky would just add the personality to the game.
Yeah. Well, I'm right there with you. Obviously, I would love to play with Tiger. That's my number one. Also, playing with him. My second one is going to be Scotty, and I've always been a big Scotty guy from even when before he was winning. I mean, I didn't know him like the way I know him now, but I always enjoyed watching Scotty. Was just a great guy, great ball striker, just or not great. I mean, second best ball striker it seems like based on stats. But my third one, that I guess people probably wouldn't have liked hearing me say 3 years ago. Maybe not so much now because they're like, "Oh, he's cool. We like him." Is Bryson DeChambeau? I really like Bryson DeChambeau. I know that he's ventured out into the YouTube world. I like watching YouTube golf as well. So that was pretty cool to see him enter into that space. But I just like the way that he kind of changed the game. In 2020, whenever he was just, I mean, he reshaped who he was, how he looked, and he would just bomb it, and that's all he would do. And he was just taking over courses because of how long he was off the tee. But that would be my three: Tiger, Scotty, and then Bryson DeChambeau. So it's going to be a fun Masters tournament. I think that, and I'm looking forward to seeing the Live guys. I know that there's a lot of talk about Live. Are they ever going to bring it back to tour? But it is fun for the majors that you get to see the best players in the world all come together, and I think that's what we miss, and that's what we're looking forward to. So, Mason, I don't think is back with us, but Cats had a great year. It was fun while it lasted. Unfortunately, it ended early. But I enjoyed this season. Colton, any last thoughts before we get off here?
Yeah, same. Obviously, once again, a great job from Pope for his first year. Excited for the future. Hopefully, all these things we talked about are things I believe are gonna happen. Give us follows. We're gonna keep up with all the transfer news, the transfer portal. It'll be a task in itself keeping up with, but continue to listen to us, and we'll try to keep up with as much as we can to also give you the information out there. So
that's another episode. As always, go Cats.
Go Cats.
That's a wrap for this episode of Bluegrass State of Mind. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also, be on the lookout for our social media pages and be sure to follow them. We've got plenty more stories, insights, and conversations coming your way. And if you really loved it, make sure to share it with a friend. From the hills to the hollers, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep that Kentucky spirit strong.